Both parties have returned to their positions. Let us continue the trial. When last we left off, Mr. Linney acknowledged the new evidence presented by Lady Farina as fact. Therefore, Lady Farina may continue stating her reconstruction of the events.
That took long enough. Now then, if everyone would lend me their attention. At this stage, let's revisit that scene from Linney's perspective. As the countdown began, he entered the tunnel. When the flatbed trolley passed, he opened the box and got into an altercation with Halsey, which caused the loud thud. He did not realize that the sound could be Finally, he used the vase to knock her out before making her change clothes. At this time, Cowell arrived in the tunnel, having heard that strange noise, and caught Linney red-handed. So Linney proceeded to knock him out too before stuffing him into that box. Afterward, Linney passed the unconscious Halsey to his accomplice through the magic box in the audience stands, before operating the devices such that Cowell's death would be ruled an accident. And there you have it. That's the truth behind what happened.
Does the defendant's side have any objections to Lady Farina's description of the events?
The key to refuting Lady Farina is the order of events, what Linney experienced, and what he saw. Seems this won't produce a... Seem... According to Linney, he left via the vent after entering the tunnel. He couldn't have had that altercation with Halsey. Linney went to the room that contains the Oratrice's core. This is the actual truth. Lenny did not take part in the underground altercation. He only witnessed traces of the aftermath.
Attention! Ace Detective Paimon has something to say! When the countdown started, Lenny did indeed go into the tunnel. But he immediately used a vent to access the Opera House basement, which is where the underground core of the Oratrice is stored. Once he reached that area, he heard a voice in what should have been an empty room. Since he felt something was amiss, he returned immediately. The crime scene had already developed by the time he reached the tunnel again, and in order to complete the magic trick, he did not remain there for any length of time. Finally, he reached the surface, and that was when the accident happened from his point of view. Therefore, he's innocent! Paimon did it! Paimon actually managed to say all that! Wasn't it awesome?
In other words, you believe that he knew nothing of the incident?
That's right!
My reasoning?
If that's the case, then if Carol hadn't entered the tunnel, who was the entire setup meant to kill? Assuming that what you say is true, Lenny only needed to kidnap the young girl to cause a new disappearance case. What would the point of...
Oh, they have a point.
That's right, you tell him!
And that's why they're partners of mine. They've managed to turn things around.
Oh, well, your denial is very strident, I'll give you that. But what proof do you have to back your claims? Of course I do. If he had been in the magic box the whole time, how could he have not heard that sound? Why do you ask? You're saying that he wasn't?
That's right! Lenny wasn't in the box or in the tunnel. That's why he didn't hear anything strange during the performance. This means that when the crime happened, Lenny had already entered the basement via the vent. The same clue you used to disprove his alibi has now become the best proof! Ha ha! How do you like that?
Well played.
To think you'd use such logic. Well then, if it wasn't Lenny who committed the crimes, then who was it?
Could there have been a third person involved? Is that really a possibility? The deceased's name is Cowell, Linny's assistant. He would have been able to tamper with the equipment. Halsey is the missing person and an ordinary audience member. Or did she have her own scheme all along? The deceased's name is Cowell, Linny's assistant. He would have been able to tamper with the equipment.
That can't be right. Are you serious? The killer was, in fact, Cowell, the deceased!
Oh, is that so? How interesting! Let's hear your reasoning then.
What I must do next is recreate the truth. What Cowell did, and how he went from would-be perpetrator to victim. It would have been tough for both people to fit into that vent. They would likely have bumped into Linny as well. Linny was not in the tunnel at that moment, which gave our criminal ample time. The sound we heard may have come from a clash between the missing Halsey and the criminal. The deceased's name is Cowell, Linny's assistant. He would have been able to tamper with the equipment. No one entered or left the Opera House through its entrances. So where would the criminal have wanted to take Halsey? Halsey's clothing was in the tunnel, so there must have been some fear that she would attract attention. It would have been tough for both people to fit into that vent. They would likely have bumped into Linny as well. No one entered or left the Opera House through its entrance. It would have been tough for both people to fit into that vent. Halsey's clothing was in the It would have been tough for
What's wrong, Traveler? Are you still having trouble figuring things out?
I see how it is. So this was all just a bluff. And here I thought you had something to show for it. But it seems you're still far from the truth.
Look, since we're at a dead end, why not consider a different track? Just like the trick as it transpired, the end result must have been utterly different from the magician's initial design.
If only we knew how Halsey disappeared.
Well, that would be nice, but the tunnel only has 3 exits, and none of them seem very likely. And it's not like this is a magic trick where you can just make a real live person disappear. You know, like you did from that water tank, Lynette.
Excuse my interruption, dear opponents, but do you not see that the crowd is growing impatient? There is no greater sin in this opera house than an awkward delay in the performance.
If the defense is unable to make further effective arguments, we will move on to the next stage of the trial.
Linny was not in the tunnel at that moment, which gave our criminal ample time. The sound we heard may have come from a clash between the missing Halsey and the criminal. The deceased's name is Cowell, Linny's assistant. He would have been able to tamper with the equipment. The vase was not broken by chance. It was used to cover important evidence. The water.
Lynette escaped from the water tank, vanishing gradually and leaving only clothes behind. If there's a similar method where a person could be transformed into water...
Oh, just a moment, please. I do hope you know how preposterous you sound at the moment. How could a person ever be transformed into water? This is reality we're talking about here, not some magic trick. Must we really? I should think that of anyone. Your friend Linny already knows this truth very well. Magic tricks are ultimately just illusions and misdirection. But Halsey's disappearance is very real. We're talking about two completely different things.
Even so, I trust the Traveler's judgment. The truth must be out there somewhere. Perhaps some new line of reasoning may open if we try to gather all the focal points that don't make sense. Since Cal was the deceased, we haven't placed much attention on him. But given that we aren't making much progress with the case, it wouldn't hurt to have a look at his belongings, would it?
People really do come up with all sorts of harebrained schemes when at the end of their rope. The way I see it, your suggestion that we broaden the scope of our investigation is nothing but a tactic for stalling the trial.
Nevertheless, I believe that this is a reasonable request on the part of an attorney. Since the trial does indeed appear to be at an impasse, I believe that additional evidence may help us make more progress. Guards, please step into the lounge and examine the personal effects of the deceased Cowl.
We are still examining the items, but we have already made critical progress that we feel must be shared with everyone post-haste. We discovered several test tubes of fluid within Cowl's baggage, each labeled separately. The notebook in his backpack claims that these fluids are... water from the primordial sea.
The primordial sea?
The note's contents also indicate that Cowell belonged to an organization that sells illegal drugs and that he had an accomplice. The notebook has many entries concerning safe usage of these fluids, in which the keyword dissolve appears many times. One of these tubes was labeled Opera Epiclese, along with yesterday's date. It is empty. The notes also state that these dissolution properties work exclusively on people from Fontaine. It's likely that Halsey was chosen as some sort of test subject. As such, we believe that the defense's hypothesis is, in fact, supported by sufficient evidence.
You've got to be kidding! People dissolving into water?
Could something so ridiculous actually be true?
Wait a moment. This reminds me of a certain prophecy, but it's just a coincidence, isn't it?
Huh. If people can become water, does that mean that the water tank's real use was as a means to hide water stains? And if Cowell was targeting that girl... Wait just a minute. Could that mean... You two, with me, quick!
Demoiselle, wait! What about your partners?
Let's go. Just trust me.
Order! Order! It is undeniable that further examination of the deceased's personal effects has yielded some surprising results, but we cannot yet verify the veracity of these clues. Still, let us assume that these clues are indeed authentic, albeit with the understanding that Ms. Halsey has yet to be found. Guards, please continue examining the items along these lines. Mr. Linney, it appears your hypothesis is supported by the evidence, so please continue speaking.
Of course. If we uphold this hypothesis, I believe that many of this case's seemingly unrelated clues can be connected together.
Right! Like the metal hook! That one didn't make sense at all. Let's think about this. Cowell's methods must have something to do with that water from the primordial sea.
The deceased's name is Cowell, Linny's assistant. He would have been able to tamper with the equipment. Now it seems like the hook rope was not meant for another magic trick, but was instead some form of triggering mechanism. The water from the primordial sea should already have been prepped before Halsey entered the magic box. The rope that held the water tank up was lit by the fireworks and snapped. As such, the focus here is on the water and not the tank. I remember there was something else within the inner layer of that box. Lynette was in the magic box on stage the entire time. Did she have something to do with this? I remember there was something else.
It's Ace Detective Paimon's time to shine again! In the original plan, Cowl would tamper with the water tank rope and the number selector securing his target. When the magic box containing Halsey was lowered, the metal hook would retract gradually and pierce the balloon at the top of the box. When the balloon attached to the box popped, the water from the primordial seed inside it would pour down and dissolve Halsey. Afterward, Cowl would enter the tunnel and break the flower vase to conceal the water inside the tunnel, with the remaining evidence being covered up by the water tank on stage. But he encountered something unexpected in the tunnel, and wound up being fatally hit by the same water tank he meant to use to cover his tracks.
Huh. That does make sense.
That actually links together a lot of the more confusing pieces of evidence.
Oh dear, what do I do? Even I think they sound convincing now. Have I falsely accused an innocent person? What a humiliation.
Now, it seems like the only point of contention remaining is the exact circumstances that led to Cowl's death. His notes mentioned he had an accomplice who could be related to the situation.
On that note, the guards have just contacted me indicating that they uncovered new evidence. I shall now invite him on stage to share it with us.
Thank you, Your Honor. We were just inspecting the luggage of the other people involved in this case, and we found an identical sample of the water from the primordial sea among Linny's personal effects.
What?
That can't be.
Oh, I see. Well, how wonderfully comedic to have your own counterattack only to come back and wound you. Does this not clear all doubt? My dear citizens, Linny did not need to take part in the dissolution of the young woman at all. Indeed, he did leave the scene via the vent. Having made modifications to the props beforehand, his accomplice Cowl then caused Halsey to vanish using the water from the primordial sea. But upon his return, in cruel avarice, Linny desired sole credit and prepared to do away with his partner in crime. Ultimately, he knocked Cowl out, and the tool meant to cover the crime up also became a murder weapon. Now, as much as I regret having come to such a viciously straightforward conclusion, it does... Am I right, Mr. Linny?
We've used up all the evidence we collected. There's no way for us to make a rebuttal here. Is this the end of the road?
Oh no! Paimon can't think of anything either. It doesn't look like there's any way around this. Seems using the water as new evidence was too good a move. Why did this have to happen now?
I think we've all seen enough now, and we have ample witnesses to my flawless reasoning. I believe this is indeed the finale. Now then, my good, noble Chief Justice, should we not, in your view, move...
Excuse me, everyone, but I must interject.
Miss, I must ask you not...
Oh, come on. Don't be hasty. I have a good reason for interrupting, you know. I'll show you an amazing trick. One that can bring a young woman who has disappeared back in the flesh, right before your very eyes. Please, do the honors, Mr. Linny.
What in the world is she saying?
No offense, miss, but miracles like that are beyond my scope as a magician.
Come on now, don't be silly. Magic is all about misdirection, isn't it? It often conceals the truth while presenting a fascinating illusion. But once everyone believes the illusion, can't magic reveal the truth to them once again? And wouldn't such a trick be the most marvelous finale to today's performance? Come on, Linny and Lynette. Give it another go. Don't worry. Spina di Rasula has made the necessary arrangements on your behalf. But, as the magic makers and stars of the show, I think I should leave the final performance to you.
I understand.
And voila!
Sorry for the